Hey guys, Nuzzly here, and today we're back with another YouTube video. Today we're going to be having a Battle Royale-esque type versus battle video. It's going to be Isabella from The Promised Neverland versus Granny from, well, Granny, Baldi from Baldi's Basics, and Theodore Peterson from Hello Neighbor. If you enjoy this video, dislike and subscribe. I'll briefly go through the feats, since if I go into detail, or more detail than I need to, then this video will be quite long, so I'll do my best to try to kind of cut it down a bit. So yeah, let's just get into this video. For strength attack potency, Granny doesn't have much besides the fact that her bat can output approximately 1000 joules, since that's how much a normal bat can output, and obviously can knock out the player quite easily with a single swing. She's also been seen being able to go through locked doors, which you could realistically lowball to wall level, but it is, kind of up in the air. Theodore Peterson, meanwhile, or I'll just refer to him as the neighbour in this video since that's what he's more typically known as, is capable of knocking out the player. However, this player is much more powerful than the average human would be, as he is able to survive falls from literally the top of the neighbour's house. And surviving that kind of fall is outputting the equivalent of 98,000 joules, and he's doing this with his bare hands as well. Isabella, meanwhile, is capable of snapping a child's leg like a twig, pretty easily, which is the equivalent of outputting approximately 990 joules. She can also be also comparable to Sister Crone, and Sister Crone was capable of running through a tree with no difficulty. Now, destroying a tree would be a small building level feat, however Sister Crone didn't actually, fully destroy it, so you can realistically lowball her to just the part that she destroyed, which is the equivalent of 1.5 million joules. Baldi, meanwhile, has been able to not only knock out the player, but fully kill them with a ruler as well. And this player also survives being ran into the wall by Got a Sweep, which means that, inputting the right calculations to get out, how powerful Baldi is hitting you with that ruler, he would be approximately outputting 380,000 joules. So out of all of that, I'm just going to put a list here about who's the strongest one out of all of them. So it goes Isabella, Baldi, the neighbour, and then Granny. Keep in mind as well that the Granny protagonist can't even survive a fall from an attic. Meanwhile, the neighbour protagonist, or the Hello Neighbour protagonist, can survive a fall from literally the top of the building. So yeah, currently Isabella has got the best strength out of all of them. In terms of speed, Granny is faster than the player, and the average person runs at around 27 miles per hour. The neighbour, meanwhile, also can move faster than the player in his fastest iterations, so we're just going to be using that. So he would also be around Granny's level in terms of speed. However, it's important to note as well that he gets rage boosts after getting hit too many times, and that overall increases his speed. So yeah, he's currently the same level as Granny, and his rage boosts make him faster. Isabella, meanwhile, is faster than Emma, who's more athletic than Ray, and Ray was capable of outrunning man-eaters or just wild demons. And it's unknown how fast wild demons are, but considering they are considered to have superhuman levels of speed, and we're hunting ancient people, it's reasonable to assume that Ray is faster than the average human would be, and therefore Emma and Isabella are as well. It's more likely to say that Isabella is faster than the neighbour and the Granny, since she's faster than someone who's faster than someone who's faster than, the average human, whereas they're just straight out, faster than the average human. It's kind of unquantifiable, but Isabella is just more likely to be faster. Baldi, meanwhile, at some point when you collect enough notebooks, is capable of being faster than the player, and since the player can travel across several rooms really quickly while running, it would put him at around 65 miles per hour. And when he's fully enraged, peak rage, he's capable of crossing a room in a second, and that equates out to 109 miles per hour. So Baldi is much faster than the other three by a lot. But in terms of who's faster between the other three, I think it's obvious that the neighbour and Granny are about equal, and Isabella's slightly above them. But when it comes to the neighbour's rage boosts, it is, again, because it's unquantifiable, it's kind of hard to say whether he'd be faster than Isabella or not. But for the time being, I'm going to say that he is, just for the sake of this video. For durability, we're going to exclude Granny's resurrection thing here, because if we did, then obviously Granny would win. So we're going to keep this interesting and ignore that. So Granny has been ran into a wall by a car going at low speed, which is the equivalent of around 93,000 joules. However, her best feat has been able to survive being frozen completely solid. The equivalent of power for, being able to freeze a human being completely solid is around 21 million joules, which is also a small building level feat. The neighbour, meanwhile, his only good durability feat has been able to survive high-speed car crashes, which at best only puts him at around 3.9 million joules. Isabella, meanwhile, has no good durability feats whatsoever. We know that if we compare to Sister Crone was killed by a demon, which should be around small building level, considering they're able to destroy trees. So you could probably say that that's her absolute limit, but that would be extremely eyeballing. So for the sake of a lack of feats, we're going to put Isabella with nothing. We're also not saying that she doesn't have any durability. We just can't tell for sure. So yeah, for lack of feats, we're just going to put her at the bottom. Baldi, meanwhile, is capable of surviving being smashed into walls by Got Sweep, which is around 51,000 joules. So in terms of who's the most durable, I think it's clear and obviously Granny is. Next would be the neighbour, then Baldi, then Isabella. If we were to scale Isabella to her attack potency, then she would be second, but again, there's nothing really to suggest that her durability is equal to her attack potency. For abilities, weaponry and technique, Granny, of course, is her signature bat, and she also has a seemingly a limited amount of bear traps. She also has enhanced senses and can also hear pretty much anything that goes on in the house as well, and she's also completely unaffected by electrocution and can thaw out of ice pretty easily. The neighbour, meanwhile, has his tomatoes and glue, which can often be used to slow people down or stun them. He, of course, just has his strength. He can also leap extremely high, he can jump, really, really high. Which is something that the other characters here haven't really displayed. Isabella's shown great acrobatics, but the other two can't really jump, or at least haven't been shown to be able to. He also has smoke bombs, as we mentioned earlier. He has rage boosts whenever he gets hit too much. His speed and his durability increase. Not only that, but he also has some level of perception manipulation, as when he gets close to you, your line of view, or just your way of seeing things, is darkened quite a bit. And not only that, but he's also a master at just sneaking around as well. Isabella, meanwhile, has enhanced senses as well, and she is extremely smart. She's by far the smartest one out of all of these. The neighbour has typically been shown to be a genius, but he's quite easily outsmarted. Isabella, on the other hand, is stupid levels of IQ. Apart from that, she doesn't have much. She has her tracking device, but that only works for people who are from Gracefield Farm, so she's not really got much. Baldi, like the neighbour, has rage boosts. However, that happens progressively as the fight would go on, and obviously the angrier he gets, the faster, and just the faster he gets. He also has some level of illusion manipulation, as he's able to create fake exits during the game that you obviously can't exit through. He's also capable of hearing every door that's opened, so it's similar to Granny's ability. For versatility, I think we all know who is at the bottom here, with Isabella at the bottom. Next for versatility will be Baldi, with Granny, then the neighbour, because the neighbour has a lot of different traps and a lot of things you can use to throw people. For us, the best abilities, on paper it's probably Granny. However, considering the neighbour and Baldi have some level of manipulation to do with how you view things, that can also be kind of, can play a part in this fight as well. And of course, the intelligence point would go to Isabella, with the neighbour coming in second, and you would argue Baldi going in third since he has a teacher, but there's nothing really to, back up that way of thinking. In terms of weaknesses, the only thing that Granny really has is that she doesn't really have perfect eyesight. Like, for example, she could look directly at you when you're inside a cupboard and just walk by and not see you. The neighbour, meanwhile, doesn't really have that weakness that Granny has. However, you can easily hide from him, I would say, if he's not expecting you there, at least. The neighbour also is stunned for a few seconds each time you hit him as well. Isabella's weakness, she can seem quite condescending and arrogant, but then again, in her series, she does come up against 11-year-old children, so I don't know if I'd be able to translate well over when she's fighting adults, so Baldi's weaknesses. Baldi doesn't really have any weaknesses, to be completely honest with you, or at least none that's really notable. So, in terms of us, the worst weakness, I'd say it's definitely Granny, then the neighbour, then Isabella, and then Baldi. I think that's quite self-explanatory. So who wins overall? We've drawn from this that Isabella's most intelligent and is the strongest. Granny is the most durable. The neighbour is the most versatile, meanwhile Baldi is the fastest, has the better abilities, and has a less vulnerable weakness. So, in terms of who's going to win, I'm going to go through each individual matchup and kind of explain how it would go down, and whoever has the most wins of it would, at the end of it, would win. Firstly, Isabella versus Granny. Now, Isabella versus Granny. Isabella's faster for one, and could probably exploit Granny's lack of amazing eyesight, and the fact that she's much stronger would most likely give her the edge in the fight. Considering the fact that Granny doesn't have any ranged things besides her bear traps, which isn't really seen throwing them, it could be quite difficult for her to win. Granny, though, is durable enough to take all of Isabella's hits. However, given that Isabella beats Granny and everything else, I'd probably have to say that Isabella would beat Granny in a fight. Given that Isabella's durability is kind of unknown, it'd be reasonable to assume that she has got superhuman level durability, bare minimum, compared to, she's quite, above the average human in terms of her other stats. So, yeah, I would say that Isabella beats Granny. Isabella versus the neighbour, this is probably Isabella's most ideal matchup because, well, if they're standing far away from each other, the neighbour would of course be able to keep her at bay with tomatoes and glue, but if Isabella gets caught in a bear trap, I think the neighbour would win, because then she wouldn't be able to really go anywhere, and her speed would be nerfed considerably. The thing is with the neighbour, of course, so whenever he gets hit, he gets stunned a bit, and considering the fact that Isabella's stronger and faster than the neighbour, if she's able to completely speed blitz him, or not really speed blitz, but able to get a good few hits in, and then just go to town on the neighbour because he'd be stunned constantly, then she would probably win the fight. However, it would get to the point where the neighbour, his durability would increase along with his speed when he gets angry. So when that happens, it's probably the most even fight here, because the speed is more than likely quite equal if the neighbour is a bit faster, and the durability, he'd be able to take more of Isabella's hits. However, at that time he would have already taken quite a bit of damage, so Isabella would still probably win that. Isabella versus Baldi. Isabella is definitely capable of taking Baldi out if she can hit him, but of course that's if she can hit him. Baldi, his speed gradually increases. So, well, yes, he would start out slower than Isabella. He would be able to, over time, get much faster. And considering how close they are in terms of durability and attack potency, and also adding on Baldi's illusion creation, or at least illusion inducement, he might be able to hold Isabella out long enough to get fast enough to then completely overpower her. I would probably have to say that Baldi wins then, because considering that if he gets one hit under the ruler, Isabella's either going to be really seriously injured or dead. So I mean, it's probably the other way around as well for Baldi. Both of them could quite easily one-shot the other. But considering how Baldi keeps on getting more and more powerful, or more and more faster as time goes on, and is able to create illusions, I'd probably have to say that Baldi wins against Isabella. Granny versus the neighbour. They're the speed equal. This is quite a close matchup, but considering the fact that the neighbour is able to play to Granny's strengths, with the fact that he has smoke bombs and that her vision would be even more lowered when getting close to the neighbour, I'd probably say the neighbour would win. Granny's durability is a big problem, but he'd probably be able to get a good few hits in without Granny being able to really do much back. So over time, the neighbour would win. And given the fact that Granny can't really do much to damage the neighbour, I'd have to say the neighbour beats Granny in a fight. Granny versus Baldi, this is probably the biggest mismatch of the entire thing, considering the fact the only thing that Granny would have over Baldi is that she would be faster at the start of the fight. And keep in mind, considering this is a battle royale, Baldi, after fighting his first opponent, would already have his rage boosts, so he would already be getting faster. And adding on his illusion creation with Granny's poor eyesight, I think it's like a complete no-brainer as to who would be able to win. Of course, Granny would be able to take a couple of Baldi's hits, but, you know, after a while, Baldi would just completely speed blitz Granny. Then the neighbour versus Baldi. Of course, it's the same situation with speed with Granny, and unlike Granny, the neighbour's durability isn't that high, so if anything, it would be a much faster fight than the Granny one. However, the neighbour with his glue and tomatoes would be able to slow Baldi down a bit, and if he get caught in a bear trap, his speed would decrease. However, that would probably just make him more angry, so that would just mean that he gets more and more faster, and therefore would beat the neighbour. So here are the stats for who would win against who in the single fights. Keep in mind as well that we didn't really take into account the state of the person is going to be in after these said fights. Like, I'm pretty sure, you know, the result of the neighbour versus Granny, one of them's not going to be at 100%. But overall, I'd say that the Baldi has the best chance of winning this Battle Royale, then Isabella, then the neighbour, then Granny. If you enjoyed this video, dislike and subscribe. If you want me to do more of these types of Battle Royale videos, and put your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.